All right, so we're going to go ahead and start our notes for sample space. In your notebook, make sure you have a clean right and left side. We're going to start with our right side. The title is sample space, so that's your title that you're going to want to make sure you put at the top of the paper. The next thing you're going to want to do is you need to divide your paper in half. Now, one way you could do it is fold your paper in half and then trace it, or just go ahead and draw a line down the center if you're not trying to make it perfect, which we're totally okay with. So whenever we work in our notes, we're going to have two different sections. The left side is going to be the term that we're learning. The right side is going to be an example of that term. So our first term is event. Now remember, at any time, if I'm going too quickly, you can always pause and rewind. An event is something that happens. Not too hard of a definition there. And then we have three examples of an event. You can flip a coin. You can picking a card from a deck of cards, so there's 52 cards, just picking one, that's an event, or you spinning a spinner, so we could spin that spinner down there, and those would all be examples of events. Remember, you can pause if you need to. The next term that we're going to deal with is the term outcome. An outcome is one of the possible results of an event. So using these same events from the top, one of the outcomes from flipping a coin could be flipping a heads. From picking a card from a deck, you could pick a card, and that card could be a red 2 that is a heart. And spinning the spinner, if you spin, you could get a blue. Now these are examples of just one single outcome that you could get. Now that's where the next word comes in, sample space. Sample space is a set of all the possible outcomes of an event. So when we were looking at flipping a coin, all the possible outcomes is, well, you could get a heads or you could get a tails. So those are the two possible outcomes from that event. So a sample space lists them all. Those are the only two things that can happen. Now for a deck of cards, that's a little bit harder to list. There would actually be 52 because there's 52 cards. And the example is you could get a red heart. That could be an ace, a 2, a 3, a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king. So an ace through a king. Then you could get a red diamond that's the same. And we just put the ... because it just keeps going. But there's 52 different ones. And on that spinner up there, we could have spun a blue, a red, a green, or a yellow. So those are examples. So sample space is basically all of our outcomes. And an event is these are the things that are happening through the events. Now a way to organize your sample space is called a tree diagram. A diagram used to show the sample space of an event. So remember, sample space is all the possible outcomes. So our tree diagram is going to show us all the possible outcomes. An example would be if we're flipping 2 coins. Now on your first flip, you will either get heads or tails. So that is my possible outcomes for just my first flip. But now I need to flip it again. Now this is where your tree comes in. So we draw like these 2 little lines, they're branches off of it, so our tree. Well, if we flipped a head the first time, we could also flip a head the second time or flip a tail. And if we flipped a tail the first time, well, we could flip a head or we could flip a tail. So after we have these, this is our tree diagram. With a tree diagram, we can create a list. And a list is going to really show us what are those possible outcomes that we have. So if we on our first flip was a head and our second flip was a head, then our outcome is head, head. And if we have head, tail, you just simply follow the branches, we'd get head, tail. Then tail, heads, and heads, tails. These are all the possible outcomes. And if you notice, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 possible outcomes. Now, from here, I'm going to go to the other side of my notebook on the left side because I've kind of run out of room. Now, if at any point you had run out of room, you could have done that then. So moving from a tree diagram, we found that there were 4 possible outcomes. This is the sample space, though, what the outcomes actually are. But there's another way that you can figure out what all the possible outcomes are, or the number of possible outcomes. That is called the fundamental counting principle. Now it has this big long name, but it's really, really easy. It's a way to figure out the total number of outcomes of an event. So we're going to use that same example of flipping 2 coins. So there are 2, that's the number of outcomes for the first flip. For flip number 1, you could have either got heads or tails. For the second flip, you could have either got heads or tails. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. That's the total number of outcomes for that event. So the fundamental counting principle is super easy. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to watch a little video about making a tree diagram. So you're going to use the second link and you're going to go to this video. While you're watching the video, you're actually going to fill out the little piece of paper that's in your folder. Now this little piece of paper is exactly what the lady is talking about in the video, and then it also uses a fundamental counting principle at the bottom. So what you're going to do is follow along, make the tree diagram, then you'll glue this down here in the bottom part of your notes. So it'll just get glued here at the bottom. If you've kind of run out of room, you can always fold it and attach it, but these will be your notes for the sample space. Good luck!